We begin tonight with a simple rule of legal professionals. In most cases, whenever possible, keep your clients off of TV and avoid letting them do interviews, which usually do more harm than good. Unfortunately for Donald Trump's lawyers, their needy, attention-craving client could only hold out for so long. And so last night on one of his favorite shows, in an interview with his friend, Sean Hannity, he seemed to make a losing argument even worse. In his latest throw spaghetti at the wall defense, or is it throw ketchup at the wall, Trump made this outrageous claim about his magical powers to declassify documents.
If you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it, because you're sending it to Mar-a-Lago or to wherever you're sending it. And there doesn't have to be a process. There can be a process, but there doesn't have to be. You're the president. You make that decision. So when you send it, it's declassified. I declassified everything.
Of course, moments earlier, Trump again implied that the FBI may have actually planted those very documents that he supposedly declassified. Unfortunately for Trump, we are not all living in an episode of Bewitched, and he cannot just wiggle his nose and expect classified material to miraculously become unclassified. And even if he could, that would also mean that the material he knowingly declassified included what has been reported as info about a foreign nation's nuclear capabilities. And beyond all of that absurdity, Trump appeared to indicate that he intentionally sent those documents to Mar-a-Lago and perhaps to other places that we don't yet know about. So much for it all just being one big accident. Now, none of this actually helps Trump's legal team, which is also dealing with the news last night of a much-needed course correction from our judicial branch. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals cleaned up the mess created by the Trump-appointed district judge who ruled that Trump apparently had a potential right to the classified documents that he stole from the White House when he left office. In a total repudiation of Judge Eileen Cannon's ruling, a three-judge panel, two of whom were appointed by Trump, sided with the Department of Justice, allowing it to resume using the more than 100 documents in its criminal investigation and removing them from the special master's review. Counter to what Judge Cannon said in her ruling, the Court of Appeals wrote, "For our part, we cannot discern why plaintiff would have an individual interest in or need for any of the 100 documents with classification markings." And to Trump's repeated claims that he just declassified everything magically, like I Dream of Jeannie, the Court of Appeals writes that that argument is irrelevant. Quote, "In any event, at least for these purposes, the declassification argument is a red herring because declassifying an official document would not change its content or render it personal." As a result of the decision by the appeals court, Judge Cannon has already revised her initial order for the special master, removing any references to the classified material that was seized from Mar-a-Lago. Joining me now is Javed Ali, former senior director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council and associate professor at the University of Michigan's Ford School of Public Policy, and Barbara McQuade, former U.S. attorney and professor at the University of Michigan Law School. Thank you both for being here. Barbara, I'm going to start with you. It feels like order has been restored and the judiciary's dignity has been restored. You know, I sat and read this 11th Circuit court ruling, and it read to me like, you're an idiot, and you're an idiot, and what? It read to me like a rebuke. How did you read it?
Absolutely. It was such a good day for the rule of law. And I know sometimes people are very cynical about the idea that there are Trump-appointed judges on this panel, but they followed the law. They described it, and they really shot down the opinion written by Judge Cannon in the district court. And as you said, to me, the most important line in the whole thing is this idea of declassification is just a red herring. It doesn't matter that Donald Trump, if he did declassify these documents, because it doesn't change the content and it does not transform them into personal records. And so, you know, sometimes when something is so far afield, it's difficult to know even where to begin. But they very methodically walk through all of the mistakes made in Judge Cannon's order and restore order and restore some faith in the rule of law.
Well, I mean, and the thing is I feel like they're ruling because you, yourself, other lawyers that we've had on the show, all were saying the same thing. No one disagreed except for one guest that we had on who seemed like he kind of wanted to be the special master in a way, you know, that he doesn't own these documents, that you can't say that you have some sort of possessory interest in something that isn't yours. That just seemed like, you know, not even law school 101. And so when you look at what this 11th Circuit did, how do you then think about this judge? Because there's no grounding in what she did. Is what she did somehow corrupt, in your view?
I don't know. I don't want to call her corrupt. I'd like to assume good faith when the judge makes a decision. But it was so profoundly wrong. You know, the idea that a special master may be appropriate to review attorney-client privilege in the case of a non-lawyer would have been a stretch. But, you know, in this case, fine. It's harmless enough. That she extended it to executive privilege seemed wrong when it's the very executive branch itself that wants these documents. But the part that was entirely over the top was dismissing the government's assertion that these documents were classified, that they were government records, that they belonged to the United States. And even under the Presidential Records Act, it is the U.S. government that owns them, even if the president is permitted to access them upon request. And so everything about it was wrong to varying degrees. And so I don't know if she was just working very hard to, in a case of significant public opinion, bend over backwards to show every courtesy to a president. She did say that she considered his status as a former president to be significant. But of course, in this country, we're supposed to consider every litigant to be equal before the law.
Exactly. Javed Ali, let me bring you in here. Let me play something else that Donald Trump said. I mean, everything he said in this interview with Sean Hannity seemed really ill-advised. I'll just use that term. Here he is attacking the National Archives, which is like the library. Go ahead.
And we were having a lot of problems with NARA. You know, NARA is a radical left group of people running that thing. And when you send documents over there, I would say there's a very good chance that a lot of those documents will never be seen again.
They'll never be seen again by you, man. They're in the National Archives. This is what Andrew Weissman said. Trump's after-the-fact, baseless denigrating NARA as a left-wing political organization is actually just an admission that he intentionally did not return the stolen docs to NARA. It's not a legal defense at all. What do you make of the fact that he openly admitted on TV that, yeah, I took the documents, you know, because you can't trust them. They're the liberal NARA.
Joy, great to be with you and great to be with my colleague, Barb, from the University of Michigan. To get to these questions, I think it's just another example of President Trump sort of reaching in different moments of time for different strategies that may sort of try to throw the trail off his potential culpability here. And so attacking NARA, suggesting that, you know, these other kind of schemes are in place, it just seems to be part of the playbook. And going back to some of the earlier points that you raised at the beginning of the clip about the classification process, the president, even though he has, or they have, broad powers as under Article 2 as commander-in-chief, cannot magically declassify anything on a whim. It has to go through a formal process. And as a former intelligence officer, I know it's very deliberate, it's very methodical. The intelligence community has to take a step back and look at the potential risk to intelligence sources, methods, and any mitigation plan to restore lost collection once you declassify something. So none of that happened in this case. And again, this claim that he just thought about declassifying something and it thereby made these super sensitive documents automatically declassified just doesn't hold anyone.
Well, I think, therefore, it's declassified. I mean, if that were the case, you know, any president's thoughts could become incredibly dangerous. As you said, these things are classified for a reason. They're protecting national security. Some countries' nuclear secrets apparently are in these documents. So just talk about how the intelligence community now can move forward. I mean, Donald Trump is accusing the FBI of planting the documents in his house. First, he said he took them. Then he said, well, no, they were planted by the FBI. Judge Deary has said, OK, prove it. He gave him a deadline. He's like, bring me back evidence that somebody planted something there that wasn't already there. You know, and so every one of his claims is being knocked down. But just talk about the importance for the investigation and for the national security of this country that now the government can re-access these documents.
Well, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, according to media reporting, is conducting a damage assessment based on the classified documents that were recovered at Mar-a-Lago. And those are only the ones that we know of. We don't know what's missing, but the ones that were recovered, really digging into those and seeing how how sensitive the sources and methods revealed in these different documents. And I have to assume these were intelligence assessments, not individual reports of a particular type of intelligence. But even collectively, there's a lot of intelligence material to sift through. And now it's a question of, again, who had access to what? Has potentially any of those assessments, could they have now be in the possession of somebody else, or did someone remember details and shared it with someone who didn't have a security clearance? And where it goes from there could be a game of telephone. So this is going to take a while, for just even on the intelligence side, forget about the law enforcement criminal side that Barbara's more familiar with, to figure out the damage that potentially could have been done. And again, if collection has been lost on certain topics, how do we get that back? And that sometimes you may not get collection back once you lose it and something becomes declassified. So this is going to be an ongoing challenge for the intelligence community.
Well, let me ask you.